Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our live webinar, Be the Leader You Want to Be, Developing and Optimizing Your Personal Brand. My name is Patricia Alvarez. I'm a Program Sales Manager for Executive Education here at Sept Business School, University of Oxford, and I'll be your host for today's session. We are delighted to have so many of you with us today from across different industries and parts of the world. Today's session is all about how we can become the leaders we aspire to be. It's always one of the most frequently asked about topics in our leadership programs, and we are thrilled to explore it with you today. I will begin with a brief welcome, then hand over to our speaker, Leasil Burrow, followed by a Q&A, and I'll return at the end with some next steps. Before we begin, just a few suggestions to help you get the most out of the next hour. Participate. Submit your questions via the chat at any time. We have a team responding live behind the scenes, and we'll also bring some of your questions into the Q&A at the end. Reflect. As Leasil takes us through the content, think about how the ideas relate to your own leadership style and experience. And the most important, apply. Be ready to take away at least one practical insight you can start using straight away. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Leasil Burrow. Leasil is an associate fellow at Sept Business School and leading expert in leadership transformation. She's the program director of our Women Transforming Leadership and Orchestrating Major Projects programs, and also contributes widely across our leadership portfolio, including the Oxford Advanced Management and Leadership Program and a range of bespoke programs for senior executives and public sector leaders. Alongside her work at Oxford, Leasil runs her own leadership consultancy, helping senior executives and teams navigate transformation, strengthen their presence, and lead with greater authenticity. With over 20 years of experience across sectors, including telecoms, oil and gas, and the public sector, Leasil brings deep expertise in leadership, influence, and transformational change. We are thrilled to have her with us today. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Leasil Burrow.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm hoping you're all able to hear me. We've had Sahara on the webinar chats just saying she's having an issue with sound. So I just would like to check that everything's okay. Wonderful. I'm getting some feedback on the chat channel, so that's terrific. Welcome to Oxford. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are dialing in from today. Imagine you're here in Oxford, face to face with this lovely welcoming person that we've got on screen, but you've only got a few moments to introduce yourself. And what I would like you to do is if in the chat channel, you can tell me your hometown and your favorite movie. So we're getting good morning from Brazil. Good afternoon from Ghana. So we've got Andre from Sao Paulo, who likes The Matrix. My goodness, it's going quickly now. So I'm going to give you a bit of insight into my favorite things. So you're probably imagining here I am in the UK, and maybe you're thinking I'm in Oxfordshire, somewhere like this beautiful picture of Oxford here. In fact, I'm dialing in from West London, in my family home that I share with my husband and my daughter. Now, if we're thinking about hometown as in where we're from, this would be a more accurate answer for me. So I'm from a little industrial coastal town called Barrow-in-Furness in the northwest of England. And my favourite movie is Apollo 13. I'm absolutely fascinated by space travel, but I'm also slightly obsessed by this movie because I can't stop thinking about the levels of trust that must have been involved and the extraordinary communication and collaboration between the people on the stricken space vessel and the people on the ground. So I must have watched this, I would more than dozens of times, somewhere less than 100, but more than 20. I'm starting to see some incredible movies being mentioned in the chat channels. So we've got somebody who says she's from Morecambe Bay. Hello, Helen. Isn't it incredible how you can tell a lot about a person from just a small amount of information? And that's how I would like you to think about your personal brand. It's the way that the brain works. We take a small amount of information and we start to fill the gaps. So if I just look at what I can see on the chat channel now. So Reham says their favorite movie is You've Got Mail. So I could already start to form a picture of that person. That's what's going on with your personal brand and your reputation. I'm going to spend a bit of time this afternoon thinking about that. But first, I'm going to try and convince you why you should care about a personal brand. Somebody said to me last week in really good spirit, she said, Leasil, isn't it just a bit ick talking about your personal brand? I said, actually, yeah, I can understand why you might have that response, but there's some really good reasons why we should pay attention to personal brand. So firstly, as a leader, when we have a strong and positive personal leadership brand, it starts to build credibility and trust within our teams. So people know what we stand for, they know what we're going to get, they know what we're about. We live in a competitive world. So it could be that you are competing for your next job or a promotion. It could also be you are competing for talent. So you as a leader are trying to attract people into your organization. So the same thing applies again. If people know what you stand for, they're more likely to be attracted to a role with you. People work for people, after all, rather than necessarily people work for organizations. It can inspire and engage your team. If people see the passion that you have for the work that you do, it's kind of infectious, and that all becomes part of your personal brand. It gives you opportunities, it opens doors. So if you're well known for a flair at a particular skill or your deep domain expertise, it starts to attract opportunities for you. It could be speaker engagements, invitations to things. You might even get approached by a headhunter. You are not going to be approached if people kind of don't really know who you are, what you stand for, or what you can offer to a team. It starts to shape organizational culture. People naturally emulate the behaviors of the senior people in an organization. So it's kind of be the person that you want your organization to be. It also can support in difficult times. So when we have a crisis on our hands, if we are clear about our personal leadership brand and other people are clear about that, you start to cut through some of that ambiguity and complexity. So they're just some of the reasons why we might want to just take a pause from our busy life and think about our personal brand. So I'm going to stop sharing the slides just for a second because Patricia's going to help me with a poll. And I've got 2 questions for you. So the first one is thinking about your own personal brand, your brand as a leader. So are you extremely clear about what your brand is, or very clear, which is a pretty solid place to be, let's be honest? Or maybe you've just got the basics, but you're still kind of tinkering around with it, never thought about it, not clear at all. This is just to give us a little bit of a temperature test on where we are. So I'm seeing the numbers start to settle down a little bit. Give it just another few moments. Where we are starting to see the majority of people is, I have the basics, but it's not fully clear to me yet. Blanca, thank you. Clear, kind of. I think that's probably a typical place for people to be. And a warm welcome to Arietta from London, who loves the Jungle Book. So we've got something in common there. Okay, can we end that particular poll, please, Patricia? And what we're seeing here is that 46% of us have got the basics, but not fully clear. So hopefully you'll be able to take away some practical tools from today. Could we go on to the second question, please, Patricia? So having decided how clear we are on our personal brand, how clear do we think other people are? So I want you to think about your key stakeholders. And if we could get into their brains and ask them what you stand for, how clear do you think they are? If you're extremely confident that they have a clear and consistent view of your brand, please vote extremely confident, or very confident, quietly confident but haven't tested it, not confident at all, or never thought about it. Okay, so we're coalescing around that middle ground again. So quietly confident, but haven't tested it out. And some people are being brave enough to say in the chat channel, not confident, not sure, don't really know what people think of me. And it could be you are in an organization where it's more typical that you get feedback just once a quarter, maybe even once a year. So it's really quite tricky to get a handle on what people think about you. But if you're able to do so and you're brave enough to do so, it gives you a sense of where you fit in an organization, how well you're positioned, potential gaps that you might want to work on, or even better, things that you are exceptionally good at and you're well known for, and you could shine those, you could polish them to a shine, and they could become your leadership spike. So I'm going to go back to the slides again. Just give me a moment. So what we are going to spend the next little while on is I'm going to give you 4 simple elements to your personal brand, okay? And the first one is clarity. So are you clear? So if we go back to our first polling question, yes, somewhat clear, got the basics, not really sure. Well, where I'd like us to get to is to think about what are the component parts of my personal brand. Okay, so this is different to the elements because the elements are about how you create your personal brand, how you get it out there. But what are the component parts of a personal brand? And this is the model that I've been using here at the business school now for the last 8 years. Slightly evolved in recent months as I'm getting more and more data in from people. So I'm just going to quickly step you through this model. So if we look at the vertical axis, first of all, and your personal brand is made up of what you do, how you do it, and to an extent, why you do what you do. And if we look at the horizontal axis, you will see that we've got 3 different domains here. So there's the interior world. What's going on for me? What's in my brain? What's in my heart? What's my belief system? Then we've got the outer world, and that's what other people see. Some of it we choose to let them see. Some of it they will see even when we're not aware of that. But then there's a third domain, and that's the wild. That's out there. That exists without us. So, for instance, if I said, "Shall we have Patricia on the team?" and someone said, "What? Which Patricia?" There's 2. Whatever I say next, that's Patricia's reputation. It could be, "We should absolutely have Patricia on the team. She's the one who makes complex things really simple and straightforward." It could be, "We must have Patricia on the team. She's really good fun. She kind of keeps the energy going." So that's our reputation. Equally, sorry about this, Patricia, but I'm going to stick with you. It could be, "Oh dear, we don't want that Patricia on the team. She just sucks the joy out of any situation." Oh, can you imagine? Could you imagine that being your reputation and you not know about it? Okay. So thinking about your personal brand, it's really good to take a stock take of what is our position on all of these different component parts. So what is my belief system? And that's partly where I was raised, partly the values instilled in me as a child by my family. It's also how I make sense of the world. So these are core beliefs from which you would not be shaken. Okay, so um, I'll give you one of mine. So I believe that people show up to work to do their best job. And that's helpful for me to have that as a belief system, because even when things go slightly adrift, I think, well, the motivation was probably there. So that's easy to adjust some of the outcomes. My value set, again, it's kind of core to who I am. What will I not be shaken from? So one of my core values is equity. I absolutely believe everybody should be given a fair trial, fair go at things, fair opportunity. So when it comes to social mobility, that's something that's at the core of who I am. Those things put together kind of led me into figuring out what is my personal purpose, which has then influenced what I deliver, the knowledge that I have acquired over lots and lots of years. And then what people will see is what I'm delivering and what I bring to the table. So it's my behavior, it's how I communicate, it's how I show up, it's how I present myself. And all of that kind of swirls around to become your personal brand. So going back to that statement about, oh, is it just a bit ick to think about your personal brand? Well, if you don't, you've got a reputation anyway. Far better to think about what is your personal brand so you get some agency over how people talk about you when you're not in the room. Now, this is a good pause for us to think about authenticity. So, just to be really clear about the outset, I'm not talking about pick a leader that you admire and try and be like her or be like him. It's not a cloak you wear. It is leadership comes from within. It's all of these component parts. These are the essential ingredients of you. So, what we're aiming to be is you on your best day as often as you can. So think about those days when you show up to work and everything's just humming. You've got your priorities for the day, you're nailing it, you're inspiring people, you're talking to people, and you're conquering some fears, solving some problems. That's you on your best day. That's authentically you. What we would like is you on your best day as often as you can. So if you think back to those beautiful images I showed you of Oxford, I could have shown you a less affluent part of Oxford, and there are some. I could have shown you an untidy cupboard in my house. Those things are authentic and they're true. They are part of a range. I got to choose which parts of that I wanted to share with you. You get to choose which parts of your leadership brand you want to share with other people. So that's the first element, clarity, getting clear on who you see yourself as being on your best day and figuring out how to be that leader as many days as you can. So let's move on to the next element then, which is consistency. And I was particularly delighted to find this image on the Mini Car Factory website. This was part of a press release when they issued their latest model. So I really love this picture because if you see a Mini driving around, you'll know it's a Mini. It's kind of distinctive. You know it's part of the Mini family. But there are so many different options on how to style your Mini. They're each going to be different. So this is a way of us thinking about how we show up in different places and how we are consistent, but not repetitive or not kind of locked in a box so we can only be one thing. So if you look down this beautiful lineup of these shiny minis, you know, we've got convertibles, we've got hard tops, we've got red ones and blue ones and green ones. They're all minis. So think about that as an analogy for you and where you show up. So by way of illustration, I'm going to share with you some screenshots. I realized these are now from a few years ago because it's still a Twitter picture rather than an X. But I wanted to share these with you so that you can see that there is consistency across where I show up, but it's not necessarily conformity. And to give you another example of this, let me give you one that's kind of easy to visualize. In your wardrobe, you might have a beautiful tuxedo or a ball gown. You might also have a pair of overalls with paint on them. It would be an unusual day if you showed up to the hardware shop wearing your tuxedo or your ball gown. Equally, you'd probably feel slightly out of place if you went to a very formal dinner in your paint splattered overalls. So thinking about how you show up for your context is really, really important, but they can still all be aspects of you. So you see, I'm slightly more jolly on the left hand side on my Facebook feed as I would be on my terribly serious grown up images on LinkedIn. And the truth kind of lies with both of those things and in between as well. Which leads me on to the next element of personal brand, which is relevance. So I've tried to visualize here relevant for the here and now. That's you as a functioning cog in the well-oiled machine that is your context, but it's also thinking about future proofing. So where are you heading? How can you prepare yourself for the next leadership challenge? That could be a hierarchical step up. It could be stretching yourself into a new discipline, but it's thinking about who you want to be. Um, Early in my career, I was given the advice, dress for the leader you want to be. And I find that quite amusing actually, because I have colleagues and friends through the various programs we've run here at the business school who are military officers. If you dress for the job you want to be and stride into your first week of basic training just dressed as a general, somebody might raise a few eyebrows. So I think we should take that advice into a less literal space and think, let it be known where you're heading. If you are hungry, ambitious, you want overseas experience, whatever it is, it's useful to let that be known to the people around you. I'm going to introduce you to another one of my concepts that I've been developing over recent years. And it's another metaphor, and it's about tramlines of authenticity. So we each have our tram lines in which we operate, the tram lines of who we truly are. So think about your ball gown to your paint splattered overalls. They're one aspect of tram lines. You could think about it as the way you communicate. So um, you could be a fantastic orator and you are very polished as a speaker. You could also be, when you're with your friends, you talk too quick, or you swear a bit, or you get overexcited. They are different aspects of you, but you must stay within your tram lines. And to illustrate that a bit further, I want you to think about your tram lines and the tram lines of the context in which you operate. So if I just click this graphic here, and you can see where there is a sweet spot that those two things overlap, that's when you and your context are in complete congruence. That's a nice place to be. Of course, if you want to be a change agent, you can slightly pull it to one side. You could pull the context a bit closer to you. And as a senior leader, it's also something that you need to watch out for, because you might inadvertently signal some subliminal change towards a set of behaviors. And if you're not cognizant of what they are, that can lead to various mishaps. But let's just think about you in the context of your world of work for now. So if you are gloriously you, and you march to your own drummer and you do things the way you always have done, but you're slightly out of step with your organization, there's going to be some rejection. Either you are going to reject it, you think this place is just not for me, it's just not going at my pace, or I don't chime with their values, it's just not working out. Or it could be, thank you for your service, but we think you might be better suited to another organization. So rejection will happen when there's no adaptation or insufficient adaptation. Think about it the other way. When you're pulled out of your authentic tram lines to try and fit in with an organization. So as I'm talking about this, maybe cast your mind back to if there's been a time that this has happened to you, where you felt that you have been required to do things that don't feel authentically right for you. And what happens here is that people get ill. Either you just start to feel less well in yourself, just too tired, or sometimes, unfortunately, people truly do get very ill when required to be something that they're not. So be very careful about thinking about the context that you are in and where you're heading. I'm going to push us on now to the fourth element, and this is about visibility. So it's all very well being fantastically clear about our personal brand and where we're heading or who we are as a leader. But if that's not visible and clear to other people, then it's purely an academic exercise. So I'm just going to think about these two different scenarios. So one is when you are in the room, and that's a bit of a gift, actually, because when you're operating in the room, you can get real-time feedback. You can kind of sense, read the room, see how things are landing. You could bide your time. You could be judicious in the way you ask questions. You're getting some real feedback. Um, I'm loving the fact that I can see the webinar chat channel moving along. So I was hoping that I would be mentally agile enough to get real-time feedback as we go, but I'm not able to read as quickly as I thought. So I'll come back to those shortly. On the left-hand side of this slide is a representation of where we appear most. Okay, and that's not face-to-face, live and unplugged in the room. It's actually we exist online and out there in the wild, whether we like it or not. So think about the messages, the online digital footprint that you have, how you respond to people on discussion threads on LinkedIn, for instance. If somebody didn't know you and were trying to get a sense of you, it's very easy these days just to go and have a rummage around on the internet and think, oh, this person is very challenging in their thinking, or they're very provocative, or they're always very supportive. So you've got to think about your brand being out there and how do you help people understand the essence of who you are and the leader you want to be. And again, think about that consistency. You on your best day as often as you can be, and don't try and be somebody else. That beautiful Oscar Wilde quote, be yourself, everybody else is taken, I think is very useful for us to bear in mind. I'm going to do a quick recap now of those four elements. So we're going to start off with clarity. You've got to start by knowing yourself. Know what you're great at, know what you're good at, know where your gaps might be, and know how to augment those gaps. Don't try and squeeze yourself into a different shape. Um, don't try and get fantastic at things that don't give you joy and you're not very good at anyway, because that's just going to exhaust you. Far better to follow the advice of Deborah Ancona and her colleagues from Harvard Business School when she talks about be an incomplete leader, be bold enough to be who you are, but find other people around you to complement your own skill sets. Be familiar with the leader that you are right now and that you can be. So figure out who you are on your good days, who you are on your less good days, and what might be the development plan to help you bring those two things together. Consistency. Be consistent. Align those messages that are out there, but most importantly, walk the talk. There's no point in you striding around the world telling people that you're incredibly planful and organized. If you show up 20 minutes late for every meeting, you've brought the wrong slide pack. If that's not you, don't try and talk yourself into it. People will spot that gap. So walk the talk and align your actions to your messages. Now, strive for relevance, adapt to the current context as far as you can, but don't squeeze yourself into a box that's not you, and think about where you're heading for the future. And then the final one, be strategic in your presence online. So think about op-ed pieces that you might publish, think about the comments that you make, the people that you follow, those kind of things. Make sure they're all consistent with the brand that you are seeking to have. Similarly, in person, think carefully about the events that you attend, which speaker gigs that you might want to opt for, and show up in a way that doesn't compromise your sense of self, but feels appropriate to your context. Okay. So I'm going to give you the work now. I'm going to ask you to think about those 4 elements. I'm going to ask you to give yourself a score out of 5 for each of those points. We're not going to do this as a poll because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but just take a few moments, think about how clear is my personal leadership brand? How consistent is it? How relevant is it? And how visible is it to other people? So if you're feeling brave enough and would like to do so, you could just drop a number into the chat channel and I'll take a look and we'll see kind of where we are. You could also share which is your best score, or if you're really feeling brave and you want to say the element that needs the most work, that would be fun too. I'm watching the chat function to see if anybody's being brave. Yeah, relevance needs some work. I think that's probably a great insight for you to start work on. Visibility is missing. Well done for sharing that. Oh, well done. We've got some full scores here. They're moving so quickly now, it's hard for me to see them all. So a few people are saying that visibility is the biggest struggle. So we might want to have a little bit of a think about how we go about strengthening our brand. So I'm going to give you a few thoughts on that. Keep the comments coming in, please. So first, how are you going to go about sorting all of this out for yourself? Because I've given you a lot of information to keep hold of today. So let me give you some steps that you can follow. So the first is, if you're not clear on your brand, really spend a lot of time thinking about that. Get it clear in your own mind before launching it into the wider world. We don't want to have ready, fire, aim. Be really clear about who you are, what you stand for, and where you're heading, and write it down. There is no substitute for documenting something because then you can come back to it. You can have a think about, what was I thinking about this then? How am I thinking about this now? How has this evolved? Where am I heading? Then once you've got a very clear view of your current and your intended leadership brand, take a bit of an audit, take some time, have a look at how you show up online. Do that dreaded thing, Google yourself, see what comes up. And also think about your face to face presence. Ask people that you trust. Can you give me some feedback? How was I in that meeting? How did that presentation go? Is there anything I should be doing better or differently? And really get brave. Try not to be afraid of feedback. The scariest feedback is the feedback that's taken a long time to percolate. So if you're going to wait a year for your performance review and then ask your boss how you've been doing, that can be quite a nervous moment. But if you're getting micro and multiple nuggets of feedback as you go along, you can course correct, you can adjust, you can do things, you can try things. So just take that audit. Then really bring it to life for yourself. So live that brand every day. Make sure you are on brand and on message with who you want to be. And a really practical way of doing that is to do a bit of reflection and journaling, preferably at the end of every day. How did it go? Where did I feel I was at my best? When I wasn't at my best, what was the stimulus that made that? Was it I was really unclear about my opinions in that meeting because I just hadn't spent the time doing the prep work? That's good information. You'll know to avoid that for future. And then that fourth one, gather feedback. We've talked about that, but be prepared to refine continuously as you go. Okay. Now, one more piece of work for you is before we move into Q&A, I just want you to have a think about if there's one thing that you're going to do from this, what would that one thing be? So pick a small incremental step. Don't do the eating the whole elephant. But if I was going to ask you, what's one thing you could do today or tomorrow that will serve you well as a good entry point into developing and sharing your personal brand? What would that one thing be? Um, so I don't know how to pronounce that name. Gagana is going to think about narrative. Hello, Moira. Moira McCarthy calling in from the United States is going to commit to journaling. That's great. Hello, Moira. Um, gather some feedback. Great. Journaling, narrative. Don't try and be fantastic in everything. Just do the things that give you joy. Wonderful. Carmel, hello. Lovely to see your name on there. I'm assuming you're just testing your channel and not telling me that's the one thing you're going to do. Zahara's going to be doing some networking. Wonderful. This is really, really good. When you commit to one step, you're more likely to do it. If you commit to a massive plan, it's going to be more difficult to take that on. And I'm going to leave you with one final thought before we move into questions. And that's to think about experiments. And it doesn't have to be kind of laboratory experiments or anything that's nefarious or sinister, but give something new a try. If you are quite nervous about feedback, just try getting feedback in the moment. As you're walking to the coffee machine after your next meeting, say to somebody who you're friendly with, how did that go? How did that point come across? Anything I could do better or differently? Just try something new. Because if we don't make an experiment, nothing changes. So be afraid to give something a little go. Okay. So that was all of me being on broadcast. We're now going to move into questions, and I've been advised that it's a much more easy to manage place to pose questions if we do it in the Q&A function. So I'm going to try and manage both, but Patricia is going to help me organize and manage some of these questions.
Thank you so much, Leasil. That was fantastic and a truly thought-provoking session. I think this is something we all think about every day. We have a couple of questions already in the Q&A box, but if some of you want to keep posting, we can start with one of the questions that were asked ahead of the session, and it's something quite common as well. So Lisa, can we start with answering what happens when your personal brand, if you have been absent from work for a long time? So if you have been absent, what happens to that brand?
Right. Great question. So thank you very, very much for that. Um, your your reputation will survive an absence from an organization, but people will start to remember what they've remembered about you. So if you leave with a very clear and distinctive leadership brand, you probably find that you'll slot back in to a similar position. If you feel like you were not particularly clear or distinct or have a visible personal leadership brand, this could also be an opportunity for you to start with your best foot forward and think about what is the leader that I am right now and who do I want to be. So quite often people take an absence from work for a very profound reason. It could be a sabbatical, it could be because you've become a parent, it could be because you've had an illness. All of those things kind of changes the essence of who we are and who we want to be. So spend a bit of time before coming back into an organization and try and be as clear as you can about how you want to be perceived in your organization. So hopefully that covers that. Patricia, I'm going to be brave. I can see the Q&A
Yes,
chat, so
I
I'm going to
was.
try and dive in. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah,
I'll do it.
absolutely. Go for it. I was going to say the first one is probably the opposite of what we've just answered, which is you are still at work, but you haven't promoted yourself very well. So that's the first question.
Yeah. Yeah. So, dear Anonymous, if you feel like you haven't promoted yourself in a particularly clear way so far, I would probably start those steps in the reverse order. So start with getting some feedback. It could be some engagement surveys, some 360 feedback. Just kind of take a bit of a test about how you're showing up. Then have a think about who is it you want to be as a leader and where you're heading, and do a gap analysis basically and say, do people see me the way that I would like to be seen? And if the answer is not quite, then figure out what are the things I'm going to do? What are those small experiments I'm going to try to get a bit clearer? And don't be afraid to articulate some of those elements of your brand or some of your intentions. So particularly if you're ambitious and looking for promotion, let that be known. Okay. Right, let me see if I can pick up another question on screen. Besides online presence, how does one improve visibility? So thank you for that, Samantha. I would say start with, to whom would you like to be visible? And then once you've figured that out, who are your key stakeholders, for instance? Who are the people who would need to be influenced to get you to where you need to be? And how do they get visibility to you? So let's say in an organization, it was your boss's boss. That person's going to be very influential about my future career, but they don't know me really. They don't know who I stand for. Try and seek out opportunities to maybe do a presentation to the leadership team, or perhaps ask for a skip level one-to-one. Just figure out where you need to be and how you need to be seen. Let me see if I can pick up some other questions. Oh, Chelsea, what a great question. How do you maintain your leadership brand when there are obstacles that cause you to doubt that brand of leadership? I think it's a bold statement, but I'm prepared to stand by it. I would be willing to hazard a guess that most people in the course of their career have had moments of doubt. I certainly have. And it's important to go back to the first component parts of that personal brand. So think about what's your belief system, what's your value set, and kind of what makes you who you are. And if you're also thinking about where are you heading, perhaps spend a bit of time figuring out, what do I see as my purpose in life? So if I think back to when I was in a former part of my career, I spent a bit of time thinking, what's topping up my energy when I'm at work and what's draining my energy. And what I figured out was the things that gave me the most energy was when I was coaching people, being a mentor, welcoming people into an organization. And it took me a while to get to it, but I figured out that that is because it's part of my core purpose. I absolutely love helping people and teams reach their full potential. And once I was able to articulate that for myself, I started to make adjustments in my world of work. So it gave me the opportunity to do those things that are more congruent with what is at the heart of me. So if you're in a moment of doubt, go back to think about, what is it I value? What do I believe in? And what is my personal purpose? Okay. I'm going to try and dip into the webinar chat as well. Mena says, I second the chief of staff question because we are shadow heroes. Okay, let me see if I can find the question. Nazish has said, for supporting functions, chief of staff, executive manager, or assistants in project, it's hard to claim credit for end results per se. Therefore, hard to build a brand. Any suggestions? Absolutely, Nazish, and whoever it was who said, and Mena, what is your contribution? If you were to have a sentence that begins with I rather than we or the boss, what what would be the completion of that sentence? I contributed this, or in the team, I was the one who, or because of me, because of the work that I contributed to that project, this was made possible. And it might feel countercultural, both in an organization and a national sense, to toot one's own horn in that way, but it doesn't have to be said with great fanfare or razzmatazz, but it also should be about claiming your valid contribution to something. And in that chief of staff situation, where you are working very closely with another leader who has got more positional power in an organization, have a think about what it is that you bring to the party that augments that leader. So they, like every other leader, will be an incomplete leader. What is it that you bring to the party that completes that leader? Those things will be part of your personal brand as a leader in your own right. Okay. Oh, right. Another anonymous question. What happens to your brand if you lost your job due to a fallout with a line manager? How does one recover from that? I think there's two different ways of thinking about that situation. So one could be you work in a large organization and you're moved to another department because of a personality clash or a difference of opinion or a disagreement with your line manager. The other way to think of that is a complete new start somewhere else. And each of those scenarios gives you an opportunity to an extent to start afresh. Best foot forward. Who am I now, having had this experience, and what would I like to be known for? Now, it's easier if you're moving somewhere else than starting afresh. So, as long as you stay within your tramlines of authenticity, you're going to be fine. You can dial up certain aspects of your character, you could dial down certain things. So, back to me showing you a picture of the lovely frontage of my house rather than the untidy cupboard. That's exactly what we're talking about here. Pick the aspects of you that you want to shine a light on and bring those forward. If you're moving to another part of the organization, there may still be some vestiges, there may be some echoes of that disagreement. It can be useful to try and put your version of the story, but the more you do that, the more it kind of entrenches that it was a thing. So, if at all possible, move on. Take a step forward. Take this opportunity to reboot and become the leader you know you are and can be. Um, Let me go back to the chat channel. Let me
Thank
see.
you,
Patricia said,
Leasil. I've just posted the last question. I thought it was very interesting too from Matthias. If you want to go into a personal brand when you don't have so much time for social media, so I'm sure that's the case for a lot of
Yeah,
people.
okay. Thank you, Matthias. I like that question because I would like to take this opportunity to correct if there's a misconception out there. I am not suggesting that you become a social media ninja. I certainly am not. I don't have a very prolific presence on social media, and that's kind of by choice. So you don't have to be out there on every single platform. It actually becomes part of your personal brand that you prefer to be face to face, or you prefer more intimate networking situations, or social media is just not for you. So, whatever it is that is part of your preference set, um, bring that in as part of your narrative and your story. I see a question from Saj. Welcome back to Oxford. Um, in moving from corporate to entrepreneur, how do I change the personal brand without losing the essence of who I am? Well, I happen to know that Saj went through the WTL, the Women Transforming Leadership experience here at Oxford. So, Saj, I'm going to recommend that you go back to thinking about your strategy for you. So that was where you were heading. And then start at the beginning of that personal branding process. Start with what are the things that are the very essence of me, and what am I bringing forward from my former position into my new position, and what do I want to be known for? The flip side of that, of course, is what do I want to leave behind? There may be aspects of how you have operated in that context that don't serve you well anymore. So you don't have to bring all of that with you. You can say thank you and farewell and just leave it at the door. And with that, I promised Patricia that I would let her have 10 minutes at the end. So I'm going to hand over to you, Patricia, because I know you've got some important things to say about some of the other programs. And in the meantime, in the background, I will try and continue to answer questions in the chat channel as they come through.
Thank you so much, Leasil, and thank you to everyone who contributed to questions. It's been such a powerful session, like I said earlier, and the interaction with with the audience is great, and this is what we like to do here in our programs. So if you're interested in going deeper into today's topic, I know a lot of you are already alumni, have experienced our programs. There is always new programs that you can explore, and you're very welcome. You can connect with all of us. You've just seen Liesil's details on screen. On our next slide, you can find all our programs for the autumn. Right now, we're just launching our AI strategic leadership. Lisa, can we go back to the previous one where we've
Yep.
got all the programs? Thank you. Perfect. Yeah. So October, we've just having the AI strategic and leadership program this week. But in October, we're having advanced management leadership, high performance leadership, Liesil's Women Transforming Leadership program for October, where we still have a few places available. And also in November, we've got the strategic leadership program. And at the beginning of next year, we're starting with high performance leadership and another iteration of the very popular AI strategy and leadership. So again, we don't want to go into a lot of information about the programs right now for information, but you can contact myself. I'll be very happy to connect on LinkedIn, book a session with me, and also my colleagues Hassan and Neus, who worked in the team with me, so we can help you. You can see who supports each program, but we're all happy to help with your next leadership steps or to help you in recommend what will be the most suitable program for you right now. So I hope you all enjoyed the session this afternoon. It's always fantastic to hear from faculty, and we really will love the opportunity to see you in person here in Oxford. Thank you so much, Leasil. It's been great. I hope you enjoyed it too.
Very
And
much so, and I've really enjoyed the chat channel and the questions. We didn't get a chance to get to everybody, but hopefully we'll see you here in Oxford at some time soon, so we could continue the conversation. If anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I would be very happy to do that. If you could just jog my memory and say it was because you were on this session, I would be very happy to have you as one of my connections. Thank you.
thank you, Leasil. That's a great point. If you want to email us as well and just mention that you've been in the webinar, that'd be very helpful too, to have a bit of background. But yeah, we look forward to staying connected. And like I said, welcome you to Oxford soon. So everyone take care and goodbye for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.